Hello and welcome to another edition of the CyberDudes podcast, coming at you for the week of the 24th of February with news from the prior week. I am Robin Thornton, as always, still with Omar Sangarima. How are you doing today, Omar?
Doing great. It's starting to not be as cold, so I'm enjoying life a little bit more.
Yeah, we took the dogs for a walk yesterday at a preserve nearby, and normally it's like gravel paths and everything, but with it having been snow that's been trampled, then melted a bit, then it's got colder again, and then it's rained, and then it went freezing again, and we didn't realize that all of that wouldn't yet have melted quite foolishly. So we were kind of like, I mean, it was like a very bumpy sheet of ice, so it was sort of like walking around, just like.
Were they pulling you?
Slow. It was quite a slow walk. At times, yes, and then I think they realised that they themselves couldn't get any purchase, so it was a little bit better. But
nice.
Yes, yeah. Today we will be talking about. Well, I will be taking some small news stories, and Omar, you will like to have a big old soapbox session about a topic that I have largely decided to bury my head in the sand about because I find it somewhat. I just don't want to deal with that shit. Everything that's going on with CISA and the just general wild shit that's going on there. Omar would be on his soapbox about that. I'll be talking a little bit about some quantum stuff and crypto activity by sanctioned entities and some credential theft aspects as well. But before we get into that, please do, if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, hit the little subscribe button down there. If you like this video, like it as well. If you have any thoughts about what we talk about on the show today, please do start a conversation in the comments section. We will be very pleased to engage down there as well. Sounded a bit suggestive, didn't
it? Hey, I mean, we're friends, but I mean, getting engaged down there, it's a little bit more.
But also, and then a look ahead to next week, we have probably our biggest guest to date. Dr. Eric Cole will be joining us. He is former chief technology officer at McAfee and chief scientist in information security at Lockheed Martin, used to be at least, is now an independent consultant and cyber expert. And he will be joining us to talk about a wealth of topics, I imagine. I think we'll probably be asking him what he thinks of the whole CISA situation, which is a neat little segue into, would you like to get on your soapbox about CISA? And bear in mind, we are limited on time.
Sure.
So what's been going down?
It's the hacksaws at Doge have settled
or Doggy, as I've heard it called.
Listen, I've heard him called Elmo. I think you've hit me with that. So there's
Elmo.
Listen, and I'm trying to
musky Elmo.
Musky, musty asshole. But there's
that's the worst one.
That's it, yeah, because that's the last thing you want to find when engaging down there. But there's listen, I'm trying to be even-handed because of course, I live in a region of the world where you see the Trump flags everywhere, and there's something to be said about, okay, let's look at the electoral map, understand that there's voices there, and I'm trying to come at it from a point of understanding, okay, why? Right? Like the economy was shit. People needed a change. There was promises that we're going to shake things up. Anybody, when you're in a rut, sometimes, chaos is an answer. Chaos can be a ladder. A little Game of Thrones there. But so I've tried to be really even-handed and take a seat back and go, wait a second, right? There's been a ton of misinformation, I think, on all sides here. But the one place where I've really just the vein bulged out of my head enough, where I'm like, I'm either going to die or I have to talk about this, is what's going on with CISA. And this organization has been, I think, one of the biggest net positives out of the government stance on cybersecurity, showing that it's been taking it seriously and trying to do some cross-departmental, bipartisan net good for all sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most unabashedly, like you say, kind of bipartisan agreement or success story out of Trump term number one.
Sure.
Because
and
all credit where credit is due. That
Sure.
was that administration's brainchild, and it has been nothing short of. I think everybody in the industry will agree.
Yeah.
That's been a massive boon to US and Western cybersecurity as a whole, and not just for government, but for business, big business,
Sure.
small business,
Sure.
individuals as well.
Yep.
It's top-notch stuff.
And this is and as you said, I like that you brought up that point. This industry, we're all contentious sons and daughters of bastards, sons of bitches here, right? Like this is, we all have our perspectives, we all have our lanes, we all have the groundings and the context for our arguments, and being in cyber, you're nothing if not outspoken many times with what you're trying to get across and warn people or help folks out, or you have a hot take on XYZ. But so when in the industry that contentious, just naturally by virtue of what we do, does line up behind, hey, but these folks are pretty legit, you really should listen to that. That's one of those things where it's like, wait a second, in this maelstrom of hot takes and divisive angles, and no, you should do this, and no, that's stupid, do that. There's very few topics where most folks go, wait a second, nope, CISA makes sense. So there is the start of what the hell is going on. I have opinions on, it's very politically motivated, of course. And I'm even trying to be even-handed from that angle. And what I mean by that is, I sent you, another story on the lead up here, where it's, it seems as though the administration's they understand and appreciate cyber as a capability that, you have to build up as much as any other, trying to cut through red tape. Let's accelerate, the Cyber Command 2.0 initiative there, which seems pretty legit. I don't know if it can be done inside of the compressed time frame. So I don't know if it's like, are we just going to see a bunch of car crashes like a Blues Brothers movie, right? But there's that aspect of it. So it stops and starts there, but oh, by the way, we're still going to slash the shit out of an agency that's just beloved on almost all sides, from its professional industry that it's at the head of here. And it's really disconcerting. On top of that, I think I'm just having like a bit of a mental hard weekend, because a lot of those folks are on my feeds that are getting let go, that are getting chopped. And I have to say, just, I can pick 10 out of the messages I've seen. And if you look at these people, they're legit as fuck. Like, they're really good at what they do. They're not in it for the cash, right? Because it's not like you go and work for one of these agencies to ball out. You feel some sort of tug or a responsibility to try to help out the cyber landscape in your country. And you do it for that. And yes, you do it because you want to be effective. And these folks are so talented, and they were dedicated to that singular mission. They had a great leader at the helm there, Jen Easterly. Hats off again. And now it's really heartbreaking to see what the hell is going on. On top of which, even if you come at it from an efficiency and Doge, we're going to slash them, like the money that CISA was costing the country was a rounding error, essentially.
It's pitch anyway. It's
so
nothing. And actually,
the
they were
ROI
doing fantastic.
Was outsized. In terms
they were doing
of what they were
fantastic
getting.
Work with very small
marvelous work, and they were supporting. It's in the name, critical infrastructure, and they were giving, they were helping hospitals, pipelines, electrical grids, water treatment facilities, election capabilities across the country. See around corners for pennies on the dollar. I don't know what the hell's going on here.
And I think that last bit there, I think the election infrastructure piece is potentially
that's the revenge thing. You think? Yeah,
I think it's very much. It's very similar to J.J. Abrams seeing what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi and going "fuck you" and basically retconning all of that stuff. That's separate. What's it? That's separate.
That's a whole other podcast.
It's a whole other podcast. Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't like what was done with The Last Jedi. I thought there was a lot of stuff that was dumb and pointless. But to just going back and completely nuking so much of it and not trying to make the best and run with what you had, it's ridiculous. So, and in the same sort of context, I think this isn't so much, I don't necessarily have a problem with, for instance, Doge looking into the social security stuff. I have reservations as to how it's been done from a security perspective.
Yeah.
Reportedly, there was aspects of, there was a situation of only one laptop, very locked down access. There was read-write access accidentally given for a period of a day, etc., etc. But it's the kind of ham-fisted way in which it seems as though issues are being uncovered. Things like 150-year-old people still designated as alive, and the explanation underneath that comes from the whole thing runs on a programming language called COBOL. It's a very, very old thing that very few people these days now know how to know how to read and write. And they charge mad sums of money per day in order to do it for the big banks, because that's what some of the mainframes still run on.
Mm-hmm.
But the COBOL date system starts at 1875, which just happens to be 150 years ago. And it's a lot of these, if you're talking about something like COBOL and it's an error, it's an issue that exists within the system, but it's going to cost you paying a few dudes who have retired $5,000 a day for the best part of 3 to 6 months to fix it. That's a very expensive project to embark on, and actually it might not be worth your while to fix it. Leaving all of that stuff in there. And this is a cybersecurity sort of thing. It's the balance of is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the unpleasant thing that might happen actually cheaper than the remedy that it's going to cost to put in place? If so, just run the risk of the thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to something like CISA, that same whole charge for efficiency and things like that, I wonder whether there's an aspect there of we're just going in trying to find inefficiency for the sake of it, and where it doesn't necessarily exist, or is this one of those things where the actual drive to find the inefficiencies costs more and creates more cost and wasted time, spun cycles, potential damage down the road than the actual inefficiencies that do exist would be worth in the first place? Again, juice worth the squeeze. It's without being on the inside, it's very difficult to really know or make a firm determination. But those are the questions that I think are worth asking.
No, and I think they're legitimate questions, and it's also like you can't not win hearts and minds by campaigning on "I love America," right? I mean, shit, that was the first line you hear, or the first phrase you hear in The Godfather, right? I believe in America. Like, of course, right? That's so saying that you're going to come in and look at inefficiencies across government agencies, that's like you're almost punching down at that point, right? That's the old trope. There's definitely legitimate cases of that being said, of that being done. But like, I'm definitely getting my tinfoil hat on when it's the same sort of agency or, like shadow group here for Doge looking at payments and, getting access to treasury system data that could very well influence some regulatory activity on any one of his businesses that is currently going on right now. Like, I start to go things that make you go, that's a legitimate, and I go, wait a second, I'm for government efficiency, right? I'm not out here going, yeah, you know what, but why and by who?
If we had a department, a specific department of conflict of interest, that'd be just piling on him like a shit ton of bricks. So
listen, I mean, what was it? I think it was John Oliver last week that said the self-determination of conflict of interest the ability to self-determine whether you have a conflict or not is itself
It's a conflict of interest.
Is a conflict of interest, and I think that was so sublimely delivered. He's now well rested because as you know, very European, so he takes a lot of breaks and whatnot. So he comes in and listen and like just slinging verbal chingazos, and at a time when obviously that sort of voice is needed to counterbalance the bulldozer of what's going on. And it's what's crazy is, like, again, I try to be even-handed. I try to look at this, but what the fuck is going on on the CISA side? Like, you're gutting something that was an absolute net positive for something that I firmly believe in. Like, I think we're in the throes of another like a cyber Cold War that could potentially get very hot very quickly, depending on what the hell China wants to do with Taiwan or what Russia decides to do with the leash that it's been given in that area of the world.
Could very well go Foxville. North Korea amasses.
100%, right? And through the things we're going to talk about exactly in 2 seconds.
Segue. Yeah.
And it's the absolute worst time. There's never a good time to be playing these silly games with something that's obviously like protecting American interests as a net positive, but definitely not now.
It's kind of like saying all these locks on my house are shit, so I'm gonna remove them, but I don't actually have a replacement for them yet.
And then I'm gonna go punch the locksmith in the dick. Like I'm just out of like spite and rage. I'm gonna kick it like I'm trying to hit a corner kick, for fuck's sake. Like, come on.
There's one I want to round off in the same vein as that conflict of interest kind of like paradox, because I just want to get this piece in because there's a platform here, and I'm not gonna lie about it. Just want to call out people, and this is people in general. If you're one of those individuals who reads something online and says that it's biased simply because you don't like it, that doesn't mean that they're biased. That means you're biased.
And again, how many times have I said, because the situation, family members, place I live, right? Very red. So I truly try to sit back and go, because I think that one of the disservices on the opposition party's roster was the automatic discounting of, okay, anybody who doesn't believe me, who's not, running Democratic blue, is just dumb. I think that itself is a dumb argument to take. You have to sit there and understand, the very real motivations. Yes, they can get co-opted into, which is what I think is going on with Doge. I think it's just like the kernels of, yeah, we agree. Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, why wouldn't you? And then suddenly, holy shit, what are you doing? These are folks that we wouldn't give a government clearance to, some of them, and they're balls deep in everything. Yeah, 100%. Right. So again, I try to be as even-handed, but there's certain things that I'm like you said, I was going to get on the soapbox. This is just insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, you said multiple times now, even-handed, and I should say, I think we started off this podcast a year ago. Oh, by the way, I forgot, it was the podcast's birthday 2 weeks ago.
That's true, right? It's right around a year old. Yeah.
But no, so for a year ago, we said, we were going to try and not be too political on this. I think kind of in the current climate, that's very, very difficult to do. So I'm going to revise the mantra is political, maybe. Partisan, certainly not. We will try and be as bipartisan as humanly possible. But when one side is doing a lot, is sitting at the controls and is also making a lot of dumb decisions.
They're button mashing, bro. Like, that's all I can think of, right? Like, I'm looking over and it's like I'm trying to play Street Fighter, and then and then it's just like
they're playing
but they're still
beating
me up. Yeah, but they're still beating me up. So it's like, well, fuck me, I guess.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Anyway, right, going to North Korea and crypto. So once
lighter, let's keep it lighter. Let's go lighter. Let's go lighter. Let's go
to the most secluded and secretive dictatorship and authoritarian dictatorship in the world. This is from recorded future. Sanctioned entities fueled 16 billion in cryptocurrency activity last year. Report says this is I think this is quite well timed off the back of only a few days ago. A crypto exchange had their whole wallet somehow hacked. I've not read into this yet, but there's two things. How good does the attack have to have been for your cold wallet, your offline wallet, to have got sprung to the tune of 1.9 billion? And two, what kind of security failings do you have to have had for that to happen? I think this is it's interesting that this keeps happening in the crypto space, because I was reading about SBF the other week, and one of the quotes that got said around this by one of the people who was investigating it, or I think somebody in the banking sector kind of like opining on it, was it's one of the most massive cases of just sheer corporate governance failings, or just like lack thereof. Yep. And this seems to be like a bit of a trend with crypto and crypto exchanges, is that it's just, I mean, essentially, like, it feels like it's just a bunch of 20 and 30 something dudes who've never actually worked in a professional setting before, just kind of doing things, you know, as they want, rather than actually putting in
I think
there's
enough money flowing around that when any of the adults that are brought to the table to ostensibly bring some risk guidance or directorship to the fiasco, I think it's like, well, you could rubber stamp this and get paid, get broken off a piece, or you can talk shit and then you can leave.
Yeah,
there's that aspect to it. And then I think there's a third swirling current here, which is there's very few people still right now that have the risk chops and the technical acumen sufficient to understand what the hell they should be providing oversight over, right? Because the tech is still very much cutting edge. And I was reading, one of my mentees is schooling me now, on it's like a Byzantine system, which is supposed to be super, like double blind almost, in a way, to ensure that nobody can jack anyone, and that this should be a thing. So shout out to her for schooling me on the bigger aspects of cutting edge fintech. But we're going to be reading about this. I think like MBA students in the next 5-6 years are going to be reading about it the same way we were about Enron. Like just this massive chain of fuckitude that's going on. And what's nuts is that, I'm not trying to be too political here, but like the now newer laissez-faire stance that seems to be in place in DC regarding oversight of this is just going to lead to, sadly, eventually, I think, I'll say it, I love Recorded Future, I think 16 is low. I think that's a low number. I really do. Yeah. I think it's far more than that, because this country, DPRK, is firmly understanding that this is a place that they're a leader on, right? They can't compete here, they can't compete there, they can't compete on almost any other regular metric when it comes to world stage type power. They're really good at this very niche sort of hijack and target, and they're running away with cash here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. So we mentioned North Korea. The actual subject of this Recorded Future article is actually that
Iran, right?
Are moving money out of the country's financial system in record numbers, and that's presumably, again, it's a sanctioned thing. And if you've been paying attention to politics over the last 8 years or so, Donnie don't like the Iranians. He's very heavy-handed with sanctions against those guys. So maybe that's a bit of a harbinger of things to come. If the Iranians are expecting this kind of thing to go on, then sure as hell, it's fairly likely that it's on the horizon.
And sadly, for the same nefarious purpose, man. Right? Like both actors are trying to get cash in order to build nukes. Like this is not reactionary. This is not Die Hard 6 type stuff. It's actually what happens. They don't have access to cash because the sanctions kick them out of the SWIFT system, and therefore they have to find money to fund this stuff. And it's not cheap, right? Thankfully, nukes are still hard to build and research and put together. Thank the universe. But this is primarily what they're not feeding their constituencies, or they're not building infrastructure to educate people. They're using this cash to build nukes. Hard stop.
Moving on to a hard stop. Microsoft this week announced their most recent quantum chip. Microsoft creates a chip that it says shows quantum computers are years, not decades away is the headline from Reuters. So this is on the heels of Google and IBM releasing their own chips last year, and basically saying that no, this isn't a story of a story like nuclear fusion where it's perpetually a couple of decades away. This is coming very, very quickly now. The concern around this is quantum computing, a scenario where we're not just coding in binary, the ones and the zeros, we're also using some batshit properties of very cold temperature physics to make it so that we can say, oh, it's 0 and 1 at the same time. Millions and millions of times more powerful than conventional contemporary computing. The problem here becomes, well, and for as a cybersecurity issue, your problem here becomes, well, lots of encryption works because whilst not infallible, it is crackable. It would take millions of years to do it. Oh, wait, now we have computers that are millions of times faster than current stuff. Ah, shit. Okay, now we're going to have to fix encryption. And the problem, the ultimate problem with this is, quantum computing isn't necessarily an issue in of itself. The fact that it's coming isn't an issue in of itself. It's the issue is the faster it comes, the less time we have to figure out the practicalities and scalability of quantum encryption to ensure that we do not have threat actors, most likely nation states, springing entire ecosystems of sensitive data with a highly powered quantum computer.
I mean, Robin, I'm gonna go out of left field here and say, wouldn't it be nice if there was like a government agency full of cyber smart folks that you could point at figuring the defensive side of this out? NIST, thankfully, is polling the world mind in order to try to find a way to keep stuff locked down so that this is not just a 0-day sort of situation. I haven't watched that on Netflix. I've heard conflicting reviews. So and now anything De Niro's involved in it's a question mark at this stage of his career. So I think he's got to pay child support. So you have that aspect of it. But I love the batshit qualities here, because the thing that really throws me is when you look at the exponential kind of J curve that this type of technology can do, because it's you add a qubit to anything sustainable, right? Like, hey, now I can sustain 50 qubits. And then even if you go to 51 or 52 or 53, exponentially more powerful. It's not just anything of like, okay, we can slap another GPU in a parallel sort of system, and it's appreciably faster. And if you slap enough of them together in an area and you cool the shit, it does well. This is like leaps and bounds and orders of magnitude more power each qubit that you add to a sustainable, stable array. This is gonna start. You add AI, you add synthetic biology. I'm telling you, altered carbon is like 35 years away. Like, watch. All right. Like, Bezos ain't never dying, is what I'm gonna say. Like
this is kind of the funny thing. I have had this conversation in that I used to think it was very much like it was like a science fiction thing. Like, it could kind of happen, but it's pretty much
like nice thought experiment. Like, let's go for a walk.
It's a thought experiment, but it's not going to happen. But I'm now, in my early 30s, kind of sitting here thinking, no, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm able to live forever. I think
we're in Detroit at 1900, right? And we're all on horses right now, right? But there's some shit that's going to pop off very soon. That's going to change. That's going to change things. And this is anybody who reads a history book or is in tech or just appreciates the waves of technology that wash over, right? A lot of things are converging, right? There's a lot of and it's the omni use capability of something like an AI to just target it at this problem, right? Figure out how to add. Omar just said that adding 1 qubit is crazy. Add 10. Fuck it, let's go. Or potentially, you mix in a little CRISPR, you mix in some genetic modifications. Holy shit! Yeah, you're right, man.
we're potentially in the realms of having more computing power than we actually know what to do with,
And
which is
more computing power than sense. Yeah.
And sense. Yes. Well, I think we've already got that.
Damn
Moving
you,
on.
Cloud. Damn you.
Moving on, because in 10 minutes I have to go and watch Man City embarrass themselves against Liverpool.
Good luck.
Final story. Like neat little sort of flow from our breaking encryption until the point at which contemporary encryption is completely broken. You still need to look after your passwords. This from Security magazine. Over 330 million credentials compromised by stealers. Stealers being a category of malware that gets into your machine, has a route around your browser, your internet browser's password.
As a rummage,
little password vault. Yes, a rummage. Has a rummage around your password. Just sort of takes it into a back alley, beats it up, gets all the passwords out, and then starts trying them other places on your system, which is a cautionary tale as to this is why you should not store passwords on your web browser, because they do have vulnerabilities in them. Now, for kind of stuff that you don't really care about, for like rewards things and things like that, or there's not much sensitive data, then yeah, fine, whatever, no big deal. But for the most sensitive stuff, the stuff that you really do care about, two things: use either a password manager or some other method of recording down your passwords, which should all be different, that is not accessible by anybody else. And I'm kind of leaning this towards the sort of older crowd here. A password notebook is okay, provided it is kept under lock and key, and nobody can steal it. It's fine. Lots of people will say that I'm some sort of charlatan for saying this and it's a bad thing and you should never do it. It's like, no. If a password manager is straight up not your thing for whatever reason and you're not going to use it, a notebook is better than one password for everything. Sure. Simple as that. Least worst option for any given individual. But the reason why we're saying this is because of this 330 million compromised credentials. This was found by an Israeli cyber firm called Kila in their State of Cybercrime 2024 report. The hundreds of millions of compromised credentials it found were linked to stealer activity on at least 4.3 million machines. So it's pulling somewhere like 80 passwords per machine here, and assuming that these sort of estimates are correct. And whilst these figures are only like a slight increase from 2023, there's a clear direction there. Mm-hmm. Threat actors, hackers, cybercriminals love passwords, because it's why try and pick the lock when you can steal a key? So much easier.
So much easier, so much less noisy, and
noisy. Raises far fewer red flags.
And as you're alluding to, right? Sadly, if you can steal one key, there's a high probability that key is going to open up multiple locks for that identity. Yep.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And here's where then we have another layer on this of advice, not just the password manager, not just different passwords for everything, multi-factor authentication.
Please.
If you're not adding multi-factor authentication to your login accounts,
you go fuck yourself.
2025.
No, sorry. My bad. I went full funk flex. My bad. My apology. Sorry.
I'll do the more politically. I'll do the more socially acceptable version of that. If you're not using the multi-factor authentication in 2025, you're asleep at the wheel. Seriously. And frankly, if you're not using multi-factor authentication and your accounts do get hacked or sprung or whatever terminology you want to use, don't expect anybody to have any sympathy for you. You could have prevented this. So that's our advice.
But no sympathy. But and here it's funny. Like, I love how we go back and forth, right? I get super aggro, and then you and then now you're a little aggro.
Good cut back up.
But yeah, but please tell people, like, if your stuff is like, don't try to, please, right? Like, get some help. Try to, because here's what I'm thinking, and here's the thing we know always happens is that personal preferred password on your personal devices. If that gets got, there's a high chance that it might be your go-to or some root part of the go-to that you have for your professional ones. So as both enterprise security folk as you and I are, please.
And home.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just don't try to hide it if it happens. please, right? Like we're not here, we won't have sympathy for you, but we're still going to help you, right? And we're not going to shame you, at
That
least
is
to your
true.
face. So please, no, for real. But like at least like tell people, because again, it all weaves together. It really does, right? Not everybody has the same system you have, which I think is a brilliant one. In terms of basically having like a salt and a roux and a mixing there. You're a chef with this shit, Raekwon of the cyber world. But please, like, tell folks, get help, fix it,
Yeah.
fix your shit. Yeah.
And rounding off the multi-factor authentication, if you've got any reservations about which one to use, SMS, phone, better than nothing. Email, better than that. Phone, app-based, best of the lot. If you can do app-based and you're using a lesser form, you're doing a dumb thing. Always app-based.
I was going to say, go fuck yourself again.
Google or Microsoft Authenticator, Authy, all good stuff. But please, MFA and unique passwords.
Please.
And the longer password, the better. Right. Rounding that off so I can go watch my beloved Blues get their asses handed to them. That is the end of our show. Please do remember, if you're still watching this point, subscribe, like, follow on Spotify if you're listening, and do remember, next week, Cyber Supremo Dr. Eric Cole will be with us. Until then, that is our show for this week. Please do stay cyber safe, and we will see you again in 7 or 8 days.
Adios.
Bye-bye.